Serafina opens her eyes to find herself lying on the hard floor of a dim cell. Confusion immediately washes over her as she tries to move, only to feel the heavy weight of shackles pulling at her legs. Her hands are similarly bound, and a cold metal collar sits tightly around her neck. The realization hits her with the force of a physical blow. She has been taken prisoner. She remembers the chaos of the battlefield and the bitter taste of defeat. It is a deep sting to her pride that she, a noble commander, was bested by those she considers mere barbarians. The narrative shifts back in time to the year 1342, in the rugged eastern territories of the continent. The air is thick with the screams of dying men. A fierce battle rages between the disciplined forces of the Illidan kingdom and the wild barbarian tribes. Serafina, the captain of the first company for the Eastern Expeditionary Force, stands in the middle of the carnage. Her soldiers are panicked, reporting that the barbarian resistance is far too strong. The volunteer troops have been wiped out, and their left wing is falling apart. Serafina maintains her composure, shouting for her men to stay focused. She refuses to let them forget they are knights of Illidan. She quickly barks out tactical orders, telling the left wing to pull back while the center and right wings extend to form a protective formation. Her goal is no longer victory, but a fighting retreat. She knows that even if they escape, their losses are catastrophic. This marks the end of a 7-year-long expedition, and her only priority now is ensuring that as many of her comrades as possible make it back to their homeland alive. Suddenly, the sea of soldiers parts as a massive man carves his way through the battlefield. This is Veor. He stops when he sees Serafina, noting her distinctive crystal helmet. He correctly guesses that she is the general of the expeditionary force. Having grown bored of slaughtering common foot soldiers, he challenges her to face him in single combat. Serafina recognizes him as one of the barbarian elite. She realizes that if she ignores a man whose blade can shred plate armor like paper, her troops will never escape. She accepts the challenge, viewing it as a chance to buy her men the time they need. She tells her lieutenant to take command and to inform her brother that she gave her life for her country. The duel is intense and brutal. Serafina fights with every ounce of her strength, even praying to the legendary Princess Wisterizia for help. However, the sheer power of the barbarian is too much. With a final resonant strike, Veor shatters Serafina's sword. Standing defenseless, she demands that he kill her and end it. To her shock, Veor refuses. He tells her that she belongs to him now. He promises that she will survive, mostly because he can think of many good uses for her body. Back in the present, Serafina sits in her cell, dwelling on those haunting words. She wonders if she will be forced into hard labor like a farm animal, or if she will be tortured for information. The thought that she might be used for the base entertainment of men fills her with a deep sense of shame. As an unmarried noblewoman, the idea of being treated like an animal in a den of savages is unbearable. She also worries for her troops, fearing that the time she bought wasn't enough for a proper withdrawal. She feels the heavy weight of failure, knowing that without control of the East, her people back in the capital will continue to suffer. The sound of footsteps interrupts her thoughts as a woman named Circe enters the cell. Serafina immediately demands to know who she is. Circe introduces herself and explains that she serves the man who captured Serafina. Serafina assumes Circe is there to extract information through torture, calling her a barbarian girl and accusing her of bringing implements of pain. Circe calmly explains that she has only one order: to ensure that Serafina, who is being called a victory trophy, is prepared to her master's liking. Circe ignores Serafina's protests and begins to adjust her restraints. She chains Serafina's hands above her head to prevent her from struggling. Serafina braces herself for the worst, vowing that she will never submit to torture. Meanwhile, out in the wilds, Veor is busy hunting. He thinks of Serafina, calling her his treasure and anticipating that she is finally awake. Inside the cell, the treatment Serafina receives is not what she expected. Circe begins to bathe her, scrubbing away the blood and filth of the battlefield. Serafina is confused and demands to know the meaning of this. Circe simply remarks that Serafina was a mess and needs to be clean. She admits that she expected a more brutish woman given Serafina's skill with a blade, but she finds that Serafina actually has a very feminine figure. Serafina feels mocked, stating that a knight has no need for femininity. Circe tells her that her opinion doesn't matter because she has caught the master's eye. She warns Serafina that she will never leave this place again. Once the bath is finished, Circe applies scented oils to Serafina's skin and dresses her in new, soft clothes. Serafina is baffled by the treatment, wondering why a prisoner of war is being pampered and perfumed. She fears that this might be part of some strange barbarian ritual or sacrifice. Suddenly, a booming sound like thunder echoes through the area. Cersei identifies the sound as belonging to her master. Vior enters the cell, his presence filling the small space. He notes that she looks completely different now that the grime of war is gone. He introduces himself properly as the heir to Great Chief Ulden One-Eye, known as Thundering Voice Vior. Serafina is struck by his massive size and his glowing golden eyes, convinced that he cannot be entirely human. She introduces herself with all her noble titles, stating that she is Serafina de Lavillon and that she will not beg for mercy. She tells him to proceed with whatever human sacrifice he has planned, so that she can at least die with her dignity intact. Vior finds her talk of sacrifice confusing. He looks at her and simply states that he brought her here to be his bride. Serafina is stunned into silence before shouting in disbelief. She accuses him of trying to trick her or lower her guard for a ritual. Vior points out that if he wanted to kill her, he wouldn't have waited this long. Serafina argues that they are enemies, and that no one marries their enemy. Vior explains that while the West might have different rules, his clan has a long tradition of taking lady knights as brides. Serafina calls the logic insane, but Vior reminds her that she already told him he could do with her as he wished. He then explains his real motivation. He tells her that his decision isn't just based on tradition, but on the respect he felt when they fought. He says that the way she swung her sword spoke more than any words ever could, revealing a profound sincerity. He admits that he fell for her in that very moment. Before Serafina can process this confession, Vior tells her to relax because he won't take her against her will. He leaves the cell, promising to speak with her later. Cersei remains behind, bluntly telling Serafina that she is being courted. The story shifts to a flashback from 7 years ago in the Illidan Kingdom at the Margrave Lavallant estate. Serafina's brother, Sidious, informs her that the king has ordered the 17th Eastern Expedition to begin. He tells her she has been named the captain of the first company and charges her with earning glory for their family name. He also mentions an invitation to a banquet from Countess Ildhal, addressed to Princess Serafina. At the banquet, the atmosphere is shallow and judgmental. The other nobles whisper about how the war is profitable for them, despite the poor quality of food lately. They look at Serafina, remarking that she is more dashing than beautiful, and questioning the point of a woman being a strong warrior. Serafina feels out of place and escapes to a balcony, wishing she could just go home. She is joined by 3 noblewomen who lead her to a gazebo. They talk down to her, calling the East a place of monsters and dragons. They refer to the barbarians as animals who kidnap and sacrifice women. Serafina becomes angry, banging on the table and spilling wine as she defends the expedition. She explains that conquering the East is a noble goal for the peace of the people. The women dismiss her, telling her she should leave such things to men. They mention that even the legendary Princess Wisterizia went missing on the battlefield and claim that a woman's only true happiness is marriage. On her carriage ride home, Serafina is fuming. She looks out at the starving people in the streets and contrasts their hunger with the wasteful feasts of the nobility. She sees 3 desperate men attacking a traveler and intervenes. She stops them without even drawing her sword, realizing they are only acting out of hunger because the crops have failed. Feeling deep sympathy, she takes off her own expensive collar and gives it to them so they can feed their families. They are overwhelmed with gratitude, promising never to do evil again. Serafina tells herself to endure the hardships of her position so she can eventually conquer the East and improve the lives of her people. Before she leaves for the expedition, she kneels before an image of Princess Wisterizia, asking the lost princess to watch over her. Her brother, Sidious, approaches her, but instead of offering support, he asks if she failed to find a husband at the party. He tells her that a woman wanting to be a knight is selfish and that she needs to marry while she still has prospects. He dismisses her ambitions, saying that a sword has never changed policy. The memory of her brother suddenly distorts. His face twists and grows until he transforms into Vior. The barbarian looms over her, repeating her name over and over, demanding that she become his bride. Serafina jolts awake, her heart racing. She realizes it was a nightmare brought on by the barbarian's presence. However, as her eyes adjust to the light, she realizes the nightmare isn't entirely over. She looks to her side, discovering to her horror that she is currently sleeping right next to Vior. She scrambles back, her voice trembling with shock as she demands to know what he is doing in her presence. Vior sounds genuinely confused, asking why she would even question his presence in his own bedroom. Serafina's panic only intensifies as she realizes she is in his private quarters and, even worse, that he is completely nude. Vior seems unbothered by her distress, remarking that she is making quite a fuss for such an early hour. He adds that it is good to see her so full of energy after the events of the previous night. This comment sends Serafina into a tailspin of fear and confusion. She realizes she has no memory of what happened after her capture and tells him she isn't even sure she wants to know. She reminds him of his promise not to force himself upon her, but Veyor simply tells her not to worry about the small details. This dismissiveness infuriates her, and she calls him an animal, warning him not to treat a lady's honor so lightly. Internal conflict wars within her. She worries that if she were to bear the child of a barbarian, she would be creating a new enemy for her beloved homeland. Overwhelmed by shame and the disgrace of her capture, she begs Veyor to kill her immediately. Veyor is perplexed, noting that while he would understand if she wanted to kill him, seeking her own death makes no sense. Serafina explains that the shame of defeat, being taken captive, and the rage she feels while facing a nude opponent have completely destroyed her honor as a knight. She believes she is an embarrassment to her name and would rather die than live with the misery. Before Veyor can respond to her plea, Cersei enters the room carrying a bundle of dry clothes. She looks at Serafina and notes that the prisoner has finally woken up without any more trouble. Cersei explains the reality of the previous night. After Veyor brought her back, Serafina suffered a mild overdose of the sleeping drugs used to keep her quiet during transport. She had suddenly started vomiting before collapsing entirely. Veyor admits that he was actually quite worried about her. Serafina feels a wave of relief mixed with embarrassment as she realizes her imagination had run wild. Veyor apologizes for the misapplication of the medicine, explaining that it was a paralytic poison used by his people to help wounds close by, slowing the blood flow. He adds that he brought her to his room specifically so she could rest and recover, noting that he certainly can't have his future bride dying so soon. Serafina finds his explanations confusing and frustrating. She demands he hand her a sword so she can beat some sense into him, but Veyor just laughs, seeing that she is finally healthy enough for breakfast. He leaves the room to wait for her, mentioning that she hasn't eaten in the day since she left the battlefield. Serafina remains behind, feeling a strange sense of shelter within these barbarian walls. She thinks back to her grandfather, who once told her that her talent for swordplay might prevent her from finding true happiness as a woman. She remembers the harsh words of her brother, who viewed her knightly ambitions as a selfish indulgence. But then she remembers Veyor's words, how he claimed to see sincerity in her blade and fell for her because of it. She struggles with the idea of being desired for her femininity, something she has ignored for years, especially coming from a barbarian captor. Serafina decides she will maintain her pride through her diet. She expects the barbarians to serve her the bare minimum to break her spirit, but when she enters the dining area, her jaw drops. In front of her sits a massive piece of meat. She realizes that even in the capital of her homeland, she has never seen a feast this grand, especially given the recent crop failures. Veyor offers her what he calls a small portion, a quarter of the roast, but the piece of meat is literally larger than her own torso. She immediately suspects a trick, accusing Veyor of trying to use luxury to tame her and winnow away her knightly pride. She declares she would rather starve than be indulged by savages, but at that exact moment, her stomach betrays her with a loud, echoing rumble. Blushing, she once again asks Veyor to kill her to end the embarrassment. Veyor lectures her calmly, stating that if her body wants food, it means she wants to live, and refusing to eat is just a lie to herself. He speaks with surprising gravity about the respect one must show for a life taken for food, arguing that taking a life should never be done for sport. Cersei approaches and quietly informs Serafina that Veyor went out and hunted this specific animal alone just to welcome her. She reveals that Veyor is essentially the equivalent of Western royalty, and for someone of his status to go to such lengths is a great sign of hospitality. Not wanting to bring shame to her name by being rude to a prince, Serafina finally takes a bite. The meat is incredible, tender, juicy, and full of flavor. She thinks to herself that not even the royalty of Ildoran have ever tasted anything this glorious. When she asks what kind of meat it is, Veyor tells her to look out the window. He explains that it is a dragon. Serafina is nearly choked with shock, as dragons are legendary fire-breathing monsters in the West. Veyor clarifies that while fire-breathers exist, this was a different breed. He notices that despite her shock, she isn't slowing down her eating at all. Cersei dryly observes that the prisoner doesn't seem like she intends to die anytime soon. Later that day, Veyor tells Serafina he wants to show her something on the mountain. She is hesitant to trust him, but he brushes off her concerns, suggesting that common sense changes depending on where you are. He baits her by asking if she is simply afraid, which prompts her to get ready just to prove him wrong. As they walk, Serafina is surprised by the richness of the nature surrounding them. It is far more bountiful than the wastelands where they fought. They eventually reach a massive, roaring waterfall. Serafina is mesmerized, admitting she has never seen one before. Veyor then tells her to strip so they can bathe. Serafina is outraged by the suggestion of mixed bathing, calling it indecent and a barbarian practice. Cersei steps in, telling Serafina she is starting to smell and that they don't have bathhouses. She promises to accompany Serafina while Veyor goes to a different stream to give them privacy. While bathing, Cersei mentions that she is there to keep Serafina safe from the monsters that inhabit the area. Serafina sees several strange creatures nearby and panics, running away from the water before she is even fully dressed. In her haste, she gets lost and worries about running into a real savage. Suddenly, she spots a young man standing in the clearing. She is struck by how handsome and beautiful he is, thinking that few men in the West could match his looks. He is clean-shaven and elegant. The young man notices her and assumes she was startled by beasts while bathing. He mentions that his mother was a Western knight from the 16th expedition and tells her she shouldn't catch a chill, offering her his coat. Serafina is flustered by his gentlemanly behavior, wondering why such a refined man is living among barbarians. When he gets close to check if she has a fever, she turns bright red. He eventually picks her up and carries her back down the mountain princess style. When they finally encounter Cersei again, the maid smiles and asks Master Veyor how this situation happened. Serafina's heart stops. She realizes the beautiful, handsome man carrying her is actually Veyor. He had simply shaved his beard. Veyor chuckles, admitting he didn't have time to tidy himself up before his initial proposal. He teases her, noting that a simple shave made her blush like an innocent maiden. Serafina is so embarrassed and angry that she slaps him right across the face. Veyor isn't bothered, admiring the strength of her strike and reiterating that he likes her for a reason. As they walk back, Cersei mentions that Veyor spent the morning patrolling the area to keep her safe from the dragon they had for breakfast. Serafina manages to forgive him this one time because the scenery was nice, but she warns him it won't happen again. Veyor is happy with the arrangement, calling her a gracious wife. Serafina yells that she hasn't agreed to be his wife, but deep down she admits to herself that he is much easier on the eyes without the beard. However, a few days later, the thick wild beard has already regrown completely. She wonders to herself why he would ever let it grow back.